Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It's episode 2707 of The Tom Woods Show. We got Scott Horton back with us today. It's Scott Horton week once again on The Tom Woods Show. It hasn't been Scott Horton week in probably like 7 or 8 years, so we're long overdue for one. Everybody knows Scott Horton. He's the author of all the most important books that have ever been written. And I borrow that from the way he used to introduce me on his show, that I was the author of every book that had ever been written. So I'm clarifying, Scott's the author of all the important books. He is director of the Libertarian Institute. I would say that's possibly the most important thing he does. But maybe tied with that is that he's the director of the Scott Horton Academy now, which you can check out at scotthortonacademy.com. If you love Scott, you're already on that website now that I told it to you, scotthortonacademy.com. And for a very, very brief window, like you've got to do this as soon as you hear this, or this coupon code is going to be yanked. Coupon code Woods. I mean, what else would it be? Get you a discount over at the Scott Horton Academy. It's like My Liberty Classroom, but it's Scott's, so it's way better. So Scott, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Tom. Really appreciate that. Good to be with you, of course.
All right, so we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later because it's really interesting what you've done. It's a testament to what is possible in this day and age, that we can, in addition to cursing the darkness, we can also light a candle, because I like doing both. So your academy is an outstanding example of that. But let's pick up from our discussion yesterday, because in the interim, Dave Smith has released an episode of Part of the Problem in which he interviews Tucker Carlson. I mean, obviously it'd be awkward for Tucker on his own show to respond to his critics, because then it just looks lame and, like he's desperate or something. But when he's a guest on somebody else's show and he's asked about the situation, well, he's going to give his answers. And so Dave gave him an opportunity to respond to the brouhaha coming from the neocons about this. And as we said yesterday, Scott, there's nothing sincere or honest about the campaign against Tucker. I mean, these are not people who are squirmish about, let's say, I'll give you an example. We could sit here and cite all day long blood-curdling things that Randy Fine has said, and yet he's still invited to these events. That no one wouldn't even occur to them not to invite him.
As Greenwald was pointing out on Twitter and on his show, System Update, that Tucker Carlson has said some pretty inflammatory things over the years on all different subjects that were never deal breakers. And even when he was fired from Fox News, and some people were celebrating his demise in the press, they only did so anonymously because they didn't dare connect their name to criticizing the guy, because they know that, he's the most popular figure on the right outside of Trump himself. And so what was it? Here we got Bari Weiss's Free Press running a big hit piece called, Tucker Carlson doesn't love America because he loves Russia and Putin and Moscow instead. And Greenwald is saying, look, we know what's going on here. It's Israel. It's not Russia. This has nothing to do with Russia. Tucker finally decided to do his part to break the consensus on the right over Zionism in the face of the absolute Holocaust that they had perpetrated against the Palestinians over the last 2 years over there. And so they're in a panic. They don't know what to do because they know he has all this moral authority.
Yeah.
They know he's not a Nazi, but they don't have another word for a right-winger who doesn't like Israel. All they can do is say, well, you must be a National Socialist. But Tucker's like, I don't know. As he said on Dave's show last night, thinking myself as kind of a moderate. What are you going to do with a guy like that? So they're in a panic and they're freaking out and they're out of warriors. I mean, if you're on Twitter right now, it's just a charade. The whole thing is hilarious, dude. Everyone is just mocking and ridiculing Ben Shapiro. And again, they always have to lie. So the lie, whether stated or just implicit in the whole thing, is that Tucker brought Nick Fuentes onto his show to normalize him. And in order to instruct the rest of Republicanism that this guy is with us and you must accept him and his people. Except that is not the history of what happened on that show. They're just lying about that. And so, if anything, he was too soft on him, but with the purpose of giving Fuentes an opportunity to back down a bit. And I think it's pretty obvious. And I don't know the guy and I don't watch his show. I don't know very much about him. But there's been some indications, including from Dave, that in the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, that he kind of grew up a couple of years in a day and decided that, you know what, maybe I need to kind of tone down some of what I'm doing here. Now, I don't know how sincere that is or exactly what, but Tucker was saying, here's the line of my morality. And geez, I think that you're contradicting yourself when you say you're a Christian and yet you also think that the Jews are a thing that go around doing things, because that's not how a Christian view of the world really translates into the English language, kid. You got it wrong, right? That was what Tucker was doing there. And giving him a chance to back down at least a bit, which I think is fair. And I think that people ought to give him a chance to do that if that's what he wants to do, as Dave said as well. So, but they're going to lie. They go, oh, Tucker's got to go. Why? Because Tucker is now arm in arm with Fuentes. But come on. Can't you just tell the truth about anything? And then, of course, they can't. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to say, you know what? Now that Tucker's decided he's against the American empire and our support for Israel's genocide, we hate him because we like the American empire and Israel's genocide, and he's getting in the way of our killing children. They can't say that, really, can they? So instead, they got to make up a bunch of stuff about, oh yeah, as Randy Fine said, Tucker's the new head of the Hitler Youth in America. And which, by the way, this is something, I'll shut up after this. This is something that Dave said that I think is true, and I see some indications of this on the Twitter too, that the propaganda here is working, at least on some people. And maybe even Mark Levin believes himself that there's an impending Holocaust in America that is being held at bay every day. Like the level of paranoia of these people. You might remember in the history books, Tom, you went to college and stuff like that. Wasn't it America that helped to defeat Nazi Germany in the Second World War? But somehow their Holocaust is our legacy and something that American Jews there's never been an anti-Jewish pogrom in America. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's never been a single anti-Jewish pogrom in America ever, except Ulysses S. Grant marching a select group of slavers in their community in South Carolina during the Civil War, right? This whole thing is crazy that American Jews are at risk, like by and large. You know what I mean? I'm not saying nothing can happen, but.
Well, I thought a pretty revealing line was, he says, Ben Shapiro and these types like to talk about, I wear my bulletproof vest. And he says, which one of us is more likely to get hurt, Ben Shapiro or me at this point? I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is absolutely right. Like these very same people laugh at the idea of a trans genocide. They say that's only in your imagination. But so is the idea that the Fourth Reich is about to take shape in the U.S. That is just as delusional. But as you say, Tucker thinks some of them actually believe this.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hear them whining about, the left lives in some anti-reality universe. Well, so do you guys.
That means, for the audience, like if this is anyone's friends or family, like reassure them that that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, that's not happening.
There's not one sheriff in one county anywhere in this country who's going to tolerate anti-Jewish violence. And if they did, the governor would send the state troopers in to remove him and fix that problem in one evening. Give me a break, dude. It's just not ever going to happen here. It's just not. And as much as I would like to roll back the state, as Dave says, the Department of Justice is essentially the most powerful force on the planet after the Pentagon. Okay? Nobody's getting, oh, you got a militia, huh? Comes down to it, and that means a left-wing Antifa one or a right-wing whatever. Comes down to it, this national government will win. Again, Tom, with your history lessons and stuff here, that's the purpose of the national government. It's in Federalist Paper number 10, so that no faction can go to war without getting crushed by the militias of the other states coming to crush them. We had one good revolution. We're not having another one ever. That's the whole point of having a federal government in the first place, and it's held, other than that one big war between the states in the 1860s, there's not been a contest over control of the Mississippi River this whole time. So,
let me share a little something that I think bears being reminded of. Well, I think most people listening to this remember that Ben Shapiro was no friend of Ron Paul during the presidential campaigns.
I forgot how bad it was. I saw a tweet this morning. I just couldn't believe it.
Oh, it's absolutely insane. And in fact, one of them was cited in Dave's interview with Tucker. Dave cited it, that he said, talking about one of the debates, Ron Paul is manifestly insane. As in previous debates, he is now gripping the pen as he would the neck of a Jew. Now there are two possibilities here. You're living in a dream world because Ron Paul's the sweetest, nicest, grandfatherly guy in the world. And could you imagine him actually committing violence against anybody? Like there is a greater chance of a trans genocide than there is of that. Or you're just a liar and you just want to harm him, which obviously you didn't. But and it just goes on and on like that. Now,
same thing with Bill Kristol's lick spittle, Jamie Kirchick in the New Republic, and his lick spittle, Julian Sanchez at Reason Magazine, and their attacks on Ron, trying to call him some kind of racist, when everybody knows that Ron is the sweetest guy who ever was in the Congress, most sincere guy. And that's part of his appeal. The guy is the captain of the baseball team, right? Like, he's an alpha male, he's a jock and a winner, and yet he's like the gentlest guy. It's like the story of Jesus, the carpenter. You know what I mean? Like this guy who, he could be a tough guy, but he's just mild by nature. You know what I mean? As he delivers his 4,000th baby. These people are insane. Well, no, not insane. You're right. They're liars. And Ben Shapiro knew exactly what he was doing there. You know, trying to frighten people into putting this image of, this fearful image like trace paper over Dr. Paul. So I could never hear what he's actually saying, but only through that filter, And it's just crazy. I mean, it's funny, man. I remember this. I hope I'm not tattletaling on the good doctor. I think it was in 2012. I remember he was being interviewed on some news channel and they were going at him so hard. And it just happened to be like the flicker of the TV. In the moment, I caught the micro expression of Ron going, like kind of in defense against the lady. You know what I mean? But like, that's the only time I've seen like his eyebrows go down like ever. And it was for a fraction of a second. You know what I mean? It's what they call the micro expressions. I learned about that on the John Cleese documentary about the face. Tiny little things. Like, that's like his deepest subconscious being defensive against this person, just ruthlessly assaulting him. On the outside, he's like, well, no, as I've always taught, personal responsibility is very important. And just, he's, on the outside, absolutely bulletproof,
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here with a quick tip for small business owners. If your business isn't showing up online, your competitors are getting the leads and you're missing out. That's where Persist SEO comes in. For over 15 years, they've been helping local businesses grow through SEO, paid ads, and the latest in AI-powered search optimization, so you stay visible and competitive in the digital age. Whether you're in home services, legal, or healthcare, Persist SEO delivers real results without locking you into long-term contracts or overwhelming you with tech jargon. Visit ineedseo.help or call 770-580-3736 to schedule your free consultation. That's ineedseo.help. Easy to remember, powerful for your small business. And, on paper, leave out foreign policy for a minute. Ron and Ben Shapiro do agree on a lot of things. In fact, no doubt Ben Shapiro was complaining about the milquetoast Republicans and nothing ever gets done and blah, blah, blah. Well, Ron should be like a dream candidate for him. So when he calls him insane, what could that mean, really? Is it because of his economic analysis? Does that make him insane? Is it what? Well, we all know what makes him insane. What he favors is a genuine friendship with Israel, which means no special privileges for anybody. In the 18th... By the
way, for people who don't remember, in 2008 and 2012, it's not like Ron Paul was running hard against Israel and against Zionism and championing the cause of the Palestinians. Just if anyone asked him, he would tell the honest truth that, the way the Israelis treat those people is really unfair, and I don't think we should be a part of it. But there was nothing like the current controversy going on, and he was nothing like, Max Blumenthal out there trying to lead the charge against Goliath. He had the same criticism for our Israel policy that he had for our England policy, which was No entangling alliances. We don't need to be involved in these other people's problems. That was it.
That was it.
He never singled out Israel in any way. Never did.
Yeah, because because he believes in certain principles that I believe in non-intervention, so therefore that applies to everybody. I believe that the American taxpayer should not be expropriated to benefit foreign regimes. So that applies to everybody. That applies to everybody. This is not an anti-Israel thing. It's an anti-foreign atheist. So everybody understood that. But again, I mean, these people borrow from the way the left argues all the time. Like Barry Goldwater explained, I think persuasively, numerous times, including in The Conscience of a Conservative, why he opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and was not a quote-unquote racist. But he's a racist by virtue of opposing that. Well, likewise, Ron and Tucker and everybody else, they are anti-Semites just by virtue of the policy. They can't sincerely disagree with Ben Shapiro. It's always sinister. So everybody's motivated by hate. Everybody can be dealt with a magic word. In their case, racism. In this case, anti-Semitism. It's just over and over and over. And then yesterday we talked about even the economics is lefty when Tatum said, you should support aid to Israel because it gets spent in American corporations. But that just means he thinks that taking money from taxpayers and giving it to other people makes us rich. And that's a left-wing view. So I don't know how these people have the nerve to call other people woke right. Everything they do is in the spirit of woke. It's all woke.
Yep, exactly. And it's failing for that same reason, that people just aren't going to put up with that anymore. Oh, you're a racist. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, give me an argument, as Dave would say. Tell me what your argument is.
You're walking down the sidewalk and you see two strangers and one is saying to the other one, you're a racist. Immediately, you're wondering about the guy making the accusation, not about the guy being accused at this point, right? There used to be a time where like, whoa. In fact, the presumption would be that no one would even say that about you unless they really had a good reason to, because that's not fair, man. That's like a real underhanded thing to do, to stick that bad of a label onto someone unfairly. Remember that? Boy, are those days long gone. Yeah. Nobody takes that seriously at all anymore because they just wore it out. And they've done the same thing with anti-Semitism too. I mean, again, for the millionth time, and anyone ought to be able to just stop and think about this themselves while they're, walking to their car one day, that millions and millions and millions of American Jews hate Israel and hate Zionism and are against America's support for Israel. Millions of them. And maybe hate's too strong a word, but are opposed to American support for Israel and their continuing occupation and oppression of the Palestinians. Now, some of that is a little bit cynical, where you have liberal Jewish Zionists who would prefer to just let the Palestinians go just because they don't like them and they don't want them, and they figure just let them go so that they can have their Zionist dream of an 80-20 Jewish state, inside the old green line. But still, they're also kind of civil rightsy type people who, in the kind and optimistic, the positive spirit of Martin Luther King, believe that hey, man, you judge people as individuals by the content of their character. You don't treat people as a whole badly because of who they are. For example, being born not Jewish, so now you get to kill them and kill their children and steal their property from them and all these things, the way the Israelis do. And so if there's nothing anywhere near a consensus of support for Zionism among American Jews, then how in the world is anybody else supposed to be obligated to this? And again, as we were talking about on the show yesterday, where every day more and more Protestant Christians just stop believing this stuff, because how could this be right? Jesus wants me to help these people kill those people. Nah, that's not really part of my religion. Somebody might have got confused about that, but that doesn't sound right to me anymore. And people are coming to that conclusion all the time. So now you're the Israelis, and all your support is based upon BS. And so it's all falling apart. That was what Tucker Carlson was saying in the interview with Dave last night too. That poor Ben Shapiro, turns out there is a free market of ideas, and he's going bankrupt. There's just nothing to believe in here anymore. And if you look at all of the I don't know everybody's name, but like seemingly the most important MAGA leaders on X, they stand with Tucker. I wrote that tweet defending him, and I'm sure this is okay to say that Sean Davis from The Federalist emailed me to thank me for sticking up for Tucker because he's doing the right thing. I hope that's okay for me to say. I'm pretty sure it is. Because then he got attacked. He was like ruthlessly attacked by John Podhoretz for being a Hitlerian. Sean Davis from The Federalist. And John Podhoretz said he has Hitler inside his brain. It's like this crazy stuff, dude. Which, by the way, I remember my footnote now because someone tweeted it this morning, Tom. It was actually Tucker Carlson told the story on the Joe Rogan show about John Podhoretz eating a watermelon and then sitting there and eating the whole rind because the guy's IQ is like 72.
Yeah, and it was, geez, who was I listening to? Well, it might have been another one of Dave's interviews where he said somebody how the neocons have fallen, like from Irving Kristol to Bill Kristol and Norman Podhoretz to John Podhoretz. I mean, at least the older ones, they were smart, they were well spoken. But my gosh, John and Bill. And he was saying
Donald
something like
Kagan to Robert Kagan and Fred Kagan, and their horrific, horrible wives too.
Well, I'll just say, I think, I forget again, maybe it was Dave himself who said they have to know, maybe it wasn't, who cares? I can't remember. But they have to know on some level that in the sense they are a disappointment. Like they have not lived up to their, because John Podhoretz is just, you can't reason with him at all. He can't be civil to people. It's amazing.
You notice that Douglas Feith and Richard Pearl and Paul Wolfowitz have mostly gone ahead and fled the scene, right? Like, I'm not saying they're ashamed, but they know that they better just go ahead and keep their head down now. Interestingly, David Wormser is on Twitter, attempting to defend himself all the time now, and is actually quite humorous if you follow him.
So Wolfowitz is still alive?
Yeah, Wolfowitz and Pearl too. I thought maybe Pearl, he would do like Newsmax interviews from time to time. He always seemed in very ill health. I don't know, but Douglas Feith, he put up a website where he kind of defended himself from some of the worst accusations and that kind of thing. He maybe is a professor somewhere or something like that, but none of them really attempt to make too much hay now. So some of them, and on the other hand, Elliot Abrams is still out there and some of the others are too. Elliot Abrams worked for Trump last time.
Yeah.
So there are still some neocons. Of course, Bill Kristol's gone back to the Democrats, but he's still a major leader of that group. And the Kagans are still around. And Fred Kagan and his wife run the Institute for the Study of War, which is extremely influential in Washington. And so, they ain't gone.
I want to read something that I wrote in my newsletter the other day. So Sunday, I hope I didn't say this yesterday. This is all these conversations I've had with people, Scott. I can't keep them straight.
That's all right. We're old, man. Everybody.
Yeah, I know. I'm aging in real time in front of my own listeners. So Sunday was Pat Buchanan's birthday, and some of us wished him a happy birthday on X. And I kind of flexed a little, Scott, because I've been over to Pat's house and I had a picture of myself with him in his house, and he showed me he has this unbelievable, like ancient, like old, antique gun collection, and he just loves stuff like that. Anyway, so a lot of people, people wish, like we wish Murray Rothbard a happy birthday, even though he's deceased. We wish Ron Paul a happy birthday. We just do it because it's fun. Yeah, and
I sent him an email. I don't know if he got it.
Oh, okay. Well, even better.
I think his sister gets his email now, but she didn't respond. But I passed on a lot of love from all of us.
Okay, well, that's very nice. That's very nice. Well, Sunday was Buchanan's birthday, so some people on Twitter, like me, wished him a happy birthday. And then we got this rebuke from James Lindsay. James Lindsay was a leftist at some point. So you would think he would be modest enough to say, well, this isn't really my movement, is it? I probably shouldn't be the one judging what direction it should go in or which people you're allowed to wish a happy birthday to. But he doesn't have that kind of humility, you will be surprised to learn. And so he wrote this. I'm not the kind, this was in the context of retweeting somebody else wishing Pat a happy birthday. I'm not the kind of guy who makes a list, but today is going to be a very convenient day for people who make lists. Very many of them are going to reveal themselves even more clearly with this virtue signal wishing Pat Buchanan a happy birthday. Now, before you say anything, Scott, Pat Buchanan served in the Nixon, Ford, and Reagan White Houses. He was a best-selling author many times over, syndicated columnist in who knows how many hundreds or thousands of newspapers. He was a staple of cable television for decades, and several million Americans voted for him for president of the United States. I think that's kind of a lot for James Lindsay, a relative newcomer, to be demanding of us that we can't wish this guy a happy birthday, who is, like, if that's not mainstream, what's going on here? But apparently it's a signal that you're a Nazi if you wish Pat Buchanan. I mean, it's so stupid and tiresome. You're acting like the left.
And the thing is, and he's the one who calls everybody woke, right? When he's the one screeching racist at everyone constantly. And he just, Dave Smith was the one who made up that term in the first place, and then he just stole it and tried to turn it around on all of us. But there's nothing woke about us. We're the ones who ain't. And I forgot if he said this, but add to that list, if not, about the absolute brilliance of his analysis in all of his articles and all of his great books, which are just absolutely fantastic. I mean, the guy is a real historian. And just an absolutely brilliant man. I've been posting a couple of links here and there on Twitter to antiwar.com/Pat. You want to know what's right about things? We got 50 pages of articles by Pat Buchanan at antiwar.com going back to like 1999, 98, whenever it was Eric started running them. Would have been before the Kosovo War, during the Kosovo War probably. And just see for yourself how right the guy was about absolutely everything. And then on top of that, compared, only next to Ron Paul, he's like the sweetest guy in the world. At my house, we used to call him Old Squinty. But the thing was, it wasn't because he was squinting. It's because he's got such a big smile that when he smiles, you can't see his eyeballs anymore because of how huge his smile is, because it's just what a warm and sincere and wonderful guy he was, which is why even though sometimes he said some things that would have been perceived as pretty right-wing to the folks at MSNBC, they just loved him to death anyway. It wasn't until some kook ran some organized campaign to run him off of there over whatever pretended transgression. But he was not on Fox. He was on MSNBC for years and years and years and palling around with all these liberals and Democrats, and everybody loved him because he's a wonderful guy. That doesn't count for anything. And where his accusers are a bunch of dorks and or absolute scumbag traitors.
Hey everyone, this open enrollment, don't make the same mistakes again, agreeing to overpriced premiums and fine print that generates unpleasant surprises at all the wrong times. The Woods family, well, we don't play that game anymore. Affordable Care Act, get out of here. We ditched the old-fashioned way and embraced crowd health, the alternative to the crazy American health insurance world. With crowd health, we're talking health care for under $100. You get access to a team of health bill negotiators, get low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, as well as a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. And if something major happens, you pay the first $500, then the crowd steps in to help fund the rest. And of course, you'll join that crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. The system is betting you'll stay stuck in the same overpriced, overcomplicated mess. And this year it's even more complicated because most of the Affordable Care Act subsidies expire, which means your prices are going sky high. This open enrollment, take your power back. Join Crowd Health to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months using code WOODS at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS. If I may say, because I worked on the Ron Paul curriculum, I kind of helped launch Campaign for Liberty. I wrote the statement of principles. I wrote I've done a lot of stuff with him and a little bit of campaign stuff. So I have had some time to spend time with him privately, as you have. And the thing is, even in private, even when you're just one-on-one, there's no recording devices, nobody around. He doesn't speak ill of anyone even then. Not even then, because of who he is. So there is no, if he is secretly harboring, some kind of hatred toward a person or group, he deserves an Academy Award because he's somehow concealed it from the whole world.
For both of them, too. And I don't know Pat personally, hung out at his house the way I have with Dr. Paul before, but I have talked to Pat numerous times. And, I've interviewed him on the show and we've spoken on the phone and things like that. And just like with everybody, well, not with everybody, just like with a lot of people, he's exactly who you think he is. You see him on TV. That's who he is when the camera's off. And he's just a decent guy, man.
No, he totally, and everybody at MSNBC loved him. Yeah. And in fact, because he was like an elder statesman, it wasn't just that he was intelligent and they had a lot of knowledge. He also was wise. So when people at MSNBC, if somebody really needed good advice, they knew, go to Pat. Pat will give you good advice. So it's so funny that today there's this sort of consensus that Pat has always been demonized by. That's not true at all. He was amazing. He was,
even after they marginalized him, he still kind of came back, right? They prevented him from getting the presidency. But they didn't really kick him out of all of Washington until the 2010s, right? Second Obama term or something like that was when they finally purged him.
Yeah, but again, that's why as I said yesterday, I so wish that he could still be an active public figure now. Yeah. Because my gosh, if there were ever a guy who could say, I told you so, next to Ron Paul, it's this guy. All right, let me say, because I have a question I want to ask you about Iran, but let's preface that with, you last week launched the Scott Horton Academy, Foreign Policy and Freedom. And it's great. And you got swag. You can get a hoodie. You can get a coffee mug. You can get all that stuff. The Academy is online entirely. And the idea is that you can learn the stuff that you're not going to get from the mainstream about what's really going on in the world. And one of the courses, just one, is your course on all the little wars that constitute the so-called war on terror or war on terrorism. And that this time we won't have to slow you down to 1/3 speed and listen 100 times, that you're kind of like in teacher mode. All right, look, here's from ground zero. Here's the stuff you need to know. I mean, wouldn't it be great? I think a lot of people know the various countries that were involved in the theater of the war on terror. But if you were to ask them for the real details, really granular about Somalia, let's say, or maybe Syria, some people might know about, but Libya, maybe they don't really know the whole story. Wouldn't it be great to absolutely be in command of that, so that you could, because look, your critics know nothing about it. If you know one paragraph, you know more than they do, and to be able to dominate on issues like this matters, because you won't convince the person you're talking to, but the other people watching will say, whoa, I wouldn't want to get in an argument with that guy. And the reason I wouldn't want to get into an argument with that guy, because it sounds like he's telling the truth and he seems to know a lot. And that's what the Scott Horton Academy can do. So ScottHortonAcademy.com, use coupon code WOODS, very, very temporary. If the coupon code has expired by the time you use it, that's okay. Pay full price and reward Scott for decades of working in the wilderness to get this message out. Now, that's leading up to my question. I want to ask you an Iran question. So we, of course, remember that not that long ago, Trump approved a strike on Iran's so-called nuclear sites. And it was very unclear where that intervention was going to go. People like Mark Levin were actually saying that they wanted to see a regime change. They didn't just want a few bombs dropped. They wanted way more than that. And Levin was getting very impatient. I mean, Levin, who's a natural never-Trumper, was getting very impatient about the whole operation. And Trump himself, as you remember, Scott, very playfully used the words regime change, that made us think, oh, geez, maybe he is going to do this. You just never know what the guy's going to do. And then it turned into a very, very limited intervention. Trump declared it over, and that was the end. And then people like neocons went around dancing a victory lap saying, you see, all you so-called panicans, you all thought this was going to turn into this big, long, drawn-out thing, but it didn't, so you people are all stupid. Well, now, let me just say in parentheses, if it had turned into a big, long, drawn-out thing, they would have criticized us for not supporting that. So, we can't win with these people anyway, no matter what happens. But do you feel in any way, I don't know, chastened by the fact that it really did turn into a limited strike? Or do you still have concerns about where that might go in the future? Or what are your thoughts on it now?
Well, I like the way you phrase that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and eat crow like 2% or 5% maybe, because the ability of the Israelis and then the Americans to gain air dominance over Iran was much easier than I expected, or much greater than I expected. I thought that it would take a lot of special operations forces on the ground fighting to laze all those anti-aircraft. But the Israelis, I guess, had intelligence and had guys on sabotage missions behind lines. And also the technology has evolved, where the argument in the Bush years that it would take all these special operations guys on the ground with their laser designators. In fact, I think the last time I said that on TV in the spring, it was Bill Buford from the Academy and the Institute, our real military expert, emailed me and said, "Hey man, you're wrong about that. That was true, but it's obsolete now. We don't need guys on the ground with their laser designators anymore." And the Israelis apparently didn't either. And after all, in Iran, security is a government program. So apparently they did not have whatever SM-300 anti-aircraft missile systems that they had well protected at all. And so the Israelis didn't lose a single jet. I don't know if anybody even took a shot at them. They just absolutely took out Iran's anti-aircraft from the beginning and had total air dominance over the country for a couple of weeks. And they certainly didn't take a shot at the American B-2s when they were flying overhead. And so was that part of it easier than I had feared? Yeah. What? Did they finish the job? Is it fair to call it the 12-day war? I don't think so. Well, it could be, but it all just depends on Donald Trump's whim. Because if you go back to the time, you'll remember that someone asked Donald Trump, they said, "Yeah, but Tulsi Gabbard says that nothing's changed over there, that they've not broken out toward a nuclear weapon. And so what gives?" And Trump said, "Man, I disagree with that. I say they're building nukes and that's fine, whatever." He just interpret her data however he wants to. But in this case, that means essentially adopting the Israelis' frame of the argument that for Iran to have a nuclear program at all is equivalent to them having a nuclear weapons program. Well, now the Israelis and he and his forces have bombed Iran's nuclear program, but they insist that they're not giving it up. They kick the inspectors out for a little while, perhaps, potentially, I hope not, but potentially long enough to divert some nuclear material. And for the IAEA to lose track of it, I hope that is not the case. They insist still, and I'm not saying you can believe a politician, I'm just reporting to you that they say that they are still not making nuclear weapons, that they're not breaking out. When I always told you, Tom, that Iran's latent nuclear capability was essentially a bluff. We say, we won't attack you if you don't make a nuke. And they say, well, don't attack us and we won't. That they never said that. That was just implicit, right? That they have the threshold capability. They've proven they've mastered the fuel cycle. They can enrich to whatever percent they want if they make a choice to do so. So that always seemed to be a latent deterrent, obviously, right? Well, they say, no, we never said that. And we're still not making nukes now that our bluff has been called. We're still not making atom bombs, but we do insist on maintaining our civilian nuclear program. It's a matter of independence and sovereignty, and we're not giving in to you on that. And they've insisted they're not even going back into any talks with us until Trump does what Obama explicitly did and what Bush before him implicitly did, which is accept enrichment, because there's nothing that they can do about it. You can blow up every last centrifuge in the place, but you can make more. You can blow up the uranium mine. They can open up another shaft. It's their country, and we can't field an army inside of it. And so you just can't turn the thing all the way off. And so that means, in other words, it could be over if Donald Trump accepts the reality that, I hope, apparently we don't know this like we used to in May, that they're not making nukes. If U.S. intelligence says they literally still are not making nuclear weapons, but they are enriching uranium for their electricity program just like before, then he's either going to accept that or he's going to go back to war. But the war party's claim, or the White House's claim, is that now that they've bombed it, it's over. And I just don't think that's true. I'm the first to tell you that, my best information is that they really did a lot of damage to the Fordo facility, including maybe even if they didn't destroy all the centrifuges deep underground, they cut off all access to them and made them impossible to operate or do anything with. And they did, very importantly, Tom, with Tomahawk missiles, they hit the conversion facility at Isfahan. And that's where you take uranium metal, kind of ore, and then you transform that into uranium hexafluoride. Or first, you got to refine it, and you transform that into uranium hexafluoride gas. That's what you enrich. That's what spins in the centrifuges and gets enriched to higher and higher percentages of uranium-235. Then you got to transform it back into metal again. And so without that facility, that's a severe setback. But then again, they know how to build it. They had one before. So the possibility remains, of course, that they can just make a new nuclear facility deeper under a taller mountain and proceed. And the Ayatollah has insisted that that's the policy. So in that sense, they haven't really solved anything at all. If you want to say they set back Iran's nuclear program a ways, no question about that. Then again, as is kind of implicit what I'm saying here, they may have accelerated it. They may have forced the Ayatollah to go ahead and make the choice to divert uranium and now begin to make nuclear weapons. Remember, they always say this was a big victory by Israel, Tom, but when Israel attacked Saddam Hussein's declared, safeguarded nuclear facility in 1981 at Osirak, all they did was drive Hussein's nuclear program underground. I'm talking about the 1980s. And it became a nuclear weapons program then. And the CIA did not know about it. And they only found it in the aftermath of Iraq War I, when they were occupying the place. And they went, holy crap, look at all this nuclear material stuff that we're finding everywhere. So Saddam Hussein did have a covert nuclear weapons program. Not that it was very advanced, but it was in the 1980s, in between Israel's attack on the Osirak reactor and America's Operation Desert Storm, Iraq War I in 1991. And so that could be the same kind of dynamic here. You bomb the Ayatollah and he decides, fine, we'll have a safeguarded facility here, but we'll have a secret military program somewhere else. And now that because of the war, the inspectors were kicked out of the country, now we have at least a potential break in the chain of real surveillance. Now, maybe the inspectors can get back in there and say, no, every gram is accounted for. We got it. It's fine. And maybe not. I don't know. But I wouldn't bet on that. I think you'd have to give it at least all peaceniks even should have to give it a 51% chance at least that Iran is going to secretly go ahead with nuclear weapons now because we called their bluff of their latent program. Now, I don't necessarily believe that that's true, but I wouldn't deny the possibility. That's been what I've been warning you all this time would be the worst case scenario likely to happen if we do this.
Well, if you had to, I don't know, not summarize, but grade or just give an overall assessment of however many months it's been of Trump Part 2 in terms of foreign policy, we had that, and obviously he's, on Ukraine, he's been all over the place, but then we have this threat in Venezuela. We got possible threat of intervention in Mexico. So far, these are just threats apart from the, taking out of those boats. Well, how would you assess it?
Well, that's a hell of a thing, ain't it, Tom? Ron Paul was the hero we needed, and Donald Trump was the hero we deserved. So here we are. Look, clearly one hemisphere of the man's brain wants to go down in history as a great peacemaker. Right? Yeah. He doesn't want to be the great warlord. He could have run on, I kill Muslims dead. He didn't. He kind of did, but only I kill ISIS dead, but not jihad against all of Islam. He dropped all of that crap. You know what I mean? And that's W. Bush and his group's legacy. It's just not Trump's responsibility, to go in that deep into that crap. And though he is obviously responsible for killing a great many Iraqis, Syrians, but especially Afghans and Yemenis in his first term, no question about that. In his second term here, he clearly wants to make peace in Ukraine. I think he's obviously sincere about that. He just can't. He didn't know enough about the situation in the first place to really say that. He was just betting on his own ability to get a deal made. And I guess I have to say, Tom, that I think it's possible that he could get Russia to compromise if he was willing to really give enough. But enough, I think, would be politically impossible. I mean, we're talking like an absolute end of and repudiation of the new Cold War, lifting all sanctions, brand new economic agreements, and sending American companies to develop Russian resources and invite him to Washington and take him to the ball game and sign a new nuclear treaty and get back in the last three that he and W. Bush tore up and all of that, right? Friends, come on, buddy, put her there. And like, for real, put an end to the post-Cold War era and start a new one. That's what it would take. But he can't do that. And I don't think he even has the vision to do that. Meanwhile, the Russians are winning the war slowly. And for people who are very interested in how the war is going, I suggest you watch Willie OAM, especially. He's this great Australian Afghan war vet who does really great analysis on YouTube every day. And they got Provosk almost entirely surrounded now. It'll be falling maybe today or tomorrow or whatever when they finally get around to it. And yet, Tom, there's still a quarter of Donetsk that they have not taken. And there's still probably at least a third of Zaporozhye and Kherson that they have not taken, though they have formally annexed the entirety of all three of these territories. Now, they already own virtually 100% of Luhansk is under Russian control now. But again, 1/4 of Donetsk is not, and about a third of Zaporozhye and Kherson. And so for him to compromise and back down on that is virtually impossible, certainly on Donetsk. He's not going to. In his demand, when they offered talks, he said, okay, the Ukrainians can turn around and walk away and give me all of Donetsk and Zaporozhye and Kherson. But they're not going to do that because even though the Russians are slowly winning, they're winning slowly. And the Ukrainians are losing slowly. And so they don't want to just turn around and quit the field. Certainly the commanders don't. There are enough AWOL enlisted infantrymen who clearly do. But the government wants to hold on as long as they can to make the Russian conquest as slow and costly and painful as they possibly can, even though the writing is on the wall. And so Trump, he can't get the Ukrainians to give in enough to satisfy Russia. And he can't get Russia to give up what they are bound to be able to take that they have already declared that they want, in for a penny, in for a pound, and all that. So sorry, I'm rambling too long about the war, but the point being that Trump can't do nothing about it, man. And he's already tried and failed. And it sucks, but I don't think that's going to change. I think the war is going to go on for, I don't know, until the Ukrainian forces just finally are broken. And there are already enough holes in the line up and down. I don't know if the Russians have the capability to make a major push in any one place, but they certainly are winning slowly. And I guess that's going to continue until it goes quickly, right? It's because that's how it's going to go. It's going to go slowly, then all at once, eventually. I don't know how to make a time prediction on that, but that's the unfortunate circumstance there. On Gaza, Trump forced Netanyahu to make a ceasefire so that things would be peaceful and nice for his inauguration. And then he let Netanyahu break the deal and go right back to war and then suspend all aid shipments for 2 months and just bomb the crap out of these poor people, killed extra tens and tens of thousands of people. And when he finally really leaned on Netanyahu to finally call a truce, or not a truce, but a ceasefire in October, nothing had changed on the ground in terms of the strategic balance in favor of the Israelis. They had gained zero during his presidency in the lead up to the ceasefire. All they had done is kill innocent people and whatever, maybe some fighters too, but I don't think you're guilty to be a fighting age male with a rifle in Gaza while your people are being completely destroyed. Doesn't mean every single one of them are loyal to Hamas. It doesn't mean every single one of them are responsible for the civilians Hamas killed, which of course all civilized human beings condemn, and which any pro-Palestinian supporter ought to, and most do, absolutely condemn as not just morally reprehensible, but public relationally reprehensible. It's the absolute most idiot thing that Hamas could have done. was kill innocent people on October the 7th. When they could have just not. They could have gone straight to the military bases and kept it only with combatants in olive green, and they decided not to do that, and damn them for that. And that does make the group as a whole guilty, absolutely, of war crimes that day. But Tom, we really supposed to believe, of course, chivalry means women and children first. Like in war, that means that any boy between 16 and 42, you can kill him. You know what I mean? It's so unfair. The whole thing is just completely crazy, the way people frame all that. But anyway, they kept the thing going for months, and they killed tens of thousands more people, or maybe not tens of thousands more, but certainly thousands more. As you can see from the headlines on antiwar.com, is virtually a Waco massacre every day, between 70 to 100 people every single day over there. I mean, I am still not over what happened in 1993 at all. I'm not ever going to be. And there are a lot of people like me too, right there. Imagine if Bill Clinton had done that every day for the rest of his presidency. Well, whatever, for 2 years straight. That's what the people of Palestine have been going through. And that's after they ramped the thing down. The pace was much worse at first. That was like the last year of it was about a Waco a day. And so Trump is responsible for that. I'm sorry, he's the world emperor, and Benjamin Netanyahu is his butler. And Netanyahu might try to turn it the other way around, but no. At the end of the day, the boss is the boss, and Trump could have called this in, as he eventually did, call the shot and say enough. He could have done that from the very beginning. And so he is absolutely responsible for that. And let me preface, or not preface, but like parentheses here that like, man, I hate the Democrats so much, y'all, that like, they might as well have burned Waco yesterday to me. This is not, in other words, I want so badly to be sympathetic with Trump because he ain't Jeb Bush. He's a wrecker. He's a guy from TV. He's here to kick everybody's ass. And all those asses that he's kicking, I hate those people too. I mean, they say there's a grand jury looking at John Brennan right now. I want to lead the Donald Trump fan club some of the time when he's taking his vengeance against my enemies. Like, there's so much there for a guy to love, and I want to. And yet, the reality is that he's, first of all, stuck on Zionism. And a big part of him just wants to be seen as tough. Now, a lot of that is just posturing and deal making and whatever, but it's like, it is almost a Jekyll and Hyde type thing. Oh, Venezuela. Marco Rubio said we just have our way with Venezuela. Maybe we should. Navy, sail down to Venezuela. Like, whoa. Somebody that he trusts, please tell him to chill out a little bit or what? All this. The idea that they're going to bomb Mexico. We're going to go to war with the cartels in Mexico. And that's going to be like what? Operation Decisive Storm in Yemen that lasted for 7 years. And then they lost anyway. I mean, is that what we're really going to do? We're going to send the drone warriors and the special operations forces down to Mexico like Woodrow Wilson? It's just great. Teach them to elect good men, maybe. And so I guess my point then being that out here in the world, those of us who are either MAGA or MAGA sympathetic to a degree like myself, we got to make ourselves known that like, when he makes peace, when he wants to make peace, even when he embellishes, what a great peacemaker he is. Like, because of him, everything is wonderful now between Armenia and Azerbaijan or whatever. That needs to be encouraged. That's where he's got to get his hip, hip, hooray. Trump, the great peacemaker, not Trump, the conqueror. And the truth is, and you know what? And he has this in him, Tom. I'm sure you saw the clip. Remember when he was first inaugurated for the second time? And he would do, maybe he's still doing this. I don't have TV, but he was doing these press conferences in the Oval Office for like 2 hours. Unlike Biden, who couldn't hold it together for 2 minutes. He just sit there, let anybody ask anything. And he just riff off the top of his head about whatever. And you remember this one, Tom? Donald Trump said, you know what? Instead of pivoting from the Middle East to Russia and China and great power conflict, what if we just don't have conflict with anyone? I want to get along with Russia and China too, and let's just all trade together and be prosperous into the new century. He said that. Like, that could have been Ron. That could have been Dr. Paul saying, look, man, we don't have to pivot to China, and we don't have to peel Russia away from China so we can use them against China. We can just be friends with everybody. Let them have their internal problems, mind our own business, trade, and get along. He has that in him, right? It's like Darth Vader. I know there's good in you. I heard you talking. But so that's what he needs. That's it, and this goes back to our earlier conversation. It's America first versus Israel instead. Who is the war party? The war party are the Zionists. And now, yes, Marco Rubio has it in for Venezuela, but also, yeah, he's also with the worst of the neocons and has been. And so that's the real contest. And that's the Trump coalition. And that's where the big crack up is already happening. And Tucker Carlson is the Fisher point right now, where the voters voted for America first. The donors and the party owners are all representing Israel instead. And so what's it going to be? You really can't have it both ways. And so this is what it's all about.
Scott, we got to call it quits today. So first, thanks as always for coming on. Second, everybody, ScottHortonAcademy.com. You love Scott. You're going to go support him in this, but not out of a sense of duty, because you're going to love it. And it's something
really
that we all need.
It's so good. And I'm not Brad. Look, I'm nervous about my own thing. I hope people really like my presentation. But when I'm watching all the rest of the guys and stuff, it's all so good.
Oh, it is
so
top
much more
notch.
good stuff coming. It's so good, man.
Yeah. But don't forget ScottHortonAcademy.com with coupon code WOODS that will last very, very briefly. So go grab it. Scott, thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything, Tom.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.